Hyunwoo Kim stood at the edge of the great chamber, watching the alien delegates argue among themselves. The Galactic Council had been meeting for 3 days now, and they still had not let him speak. He was the human ambassador, but the other species treated him like he was invisible. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that moved on their own. The aliens sat in circles around a glowing center platform. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like they were made of living metal, but none of them looked like humans. Dr. Sojin Park sat next to him in the human section. She was quiet as always, but Hyunwoo could see the anger in her eyes. For 30 years she had studied these aliens. She knew their languages, their customs, their biology, but they never asked for her opinion. They never asked for any human opinion. The Krathan delegate was speaking now. He was tall and covered in red scales that caught the strange light. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "The humans take up too much space," he said. "They breed too fast. They ask for too much." Other delegates nodded. The Villani representative, a creature that looked like a walking tree, made clicking, sounds that meant agreement. The ethereal collective's speaker just floated there, glowing brighter when it was pleased. Hyunwoo had heard this before. The aliens always said humans were the problem. Too loud, too messy, too quick to fight. But they never mentioned how humans had saved 3 different species from dying diseases. They never talked about how human engineers had fixed their broken stargates. They never said thank you for anything. "The humans must give up their colonies in the Deneb system," the Krathan continued. "Our military needs those worlds for training." Sojin's hands turned into fists. Those colonies had families. Human children were born there. People had worked their whole lives to build homes on those worlds. But the council did not care about that. The council speaker, Velthar, raised one of his 4 arms. He was from an old race that thought they were better than everyone else. "The motion is clear," he said in his cold voice. "All in favor of relocating the humans?" Arms, tentacles, and other strange limbs went up around the chamber. Hyunwoo counted them quickly. More than enough to pass the vote. The humans would lose their homes again. This was not the first time. In 30 years, the council had taken away 12 human colonies. They said it was for the greater good. They said humans would understand. They said humans should be grateful to be part of the galactic community. But humans were never really part of it. They could not vote on important matters. They could not trade freely with other species. They had to pay taxes to the council, but got almost nothing back. When human ships were attacked by pirates, the council said it was not their problem. When human colonies needed help during natural disasters, the council was always too busy. "Any objections?" Velthar asked, but he was already moving to close the vote. Hyunwoo stood up. His chair made a loud scraping sound in the quiet chamber. Every alien head turned to look at him. Some seemed surprised that he was still there. "I object," Hyunwoo said clearly. Velthar's eyes narrowed. They were completely black, like looking into deep space. "The human delegation has no voting rights in military matters." "Then give us voting rights," Hyunwoo replied. "We have been part of this council for 30 years. We follow your laws. We pay your taxes. We help when you ask. But we have no say in anything that affects our people." The chamber filled with sounds. Some aliens hissed, others clicked, and a few made noises that hurt human ears. They were not happy sounds. "Humans are a young species," said the Villani delegate. "You have not earned the right to vote on galactic matters. Perhaps in another century when you have proven yourselves." "Proven ourselves how?" Sojin asked, standing next to Hyunwoo. "By letting you take our homes whenever you want? By staying quiet while you treat us like children?" The ethereal collective speaker pulsed red. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Humans are too emotional, too violent, too unpredictable. This outburst proves our point." Hyunwoo felt his anger growing, but he kept his voice calm. "We have followed every rule. We have kept every agreement. We have never started a war. What more do you want from us?" "Obedience," Velthar said simply. "Accept the relocation. Your people will be compensated." "Compensated?" Sojin's voice was getting louder. "You cannot compensate for a home. You cannot pay people for their memories. Those colonies are where human children took their first steps, where families built their lives. You want to take that away for military training? The Krathan delegate stood up, all 8 feet of him. If humans cannot accept council decisions, perhaps they should reconsider their membership. The chamber went very quiet. It was meant to be a threat. The aliens thought humans needed the council more than the council needed humans. They thought humans would be afraid to leave. Hyun-woo looked around the chamber. He saw the same arrogance in every alien face. They all thought they were doing humans a favor by letting them stay. They all believed humans were weak and dependent. He thought about Earth, far away from this place. He thought about human colonies scattered across the galaxy, all of them following rules made by people who did not care about them. He thought about human children who would grow up believing they were second-class citizens in their own galaxy. Then he thought about something else. He thought about the reports that came from the edge of the galaxy, the places these aliens called worthless. Human explorers had found interesting things out there. Strange energy readings, unusual mineral deposits, but they had to keep quiet about it because the council controlled all exploration rights. You know what? Hyun-woo said finally. You are right. The aliens looked confused. This was not what they expected. Humans should reconsider our membership, Hyun-woo continued. In fact, we already have. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a document. It was printed on real paper, the old-fashioned way. He held it up so everyone could see. The United Earth Coalition formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, he read. We renounce all treaties, agreements, and obligations. We will no longer follow council law or pay council taxes. We will no longer ask for council permission to explore, to trade, or to defend ourselves. Humanity walks its own path now. The chamber exploded with noise. Some aliens were shouting, others were making alarm calls. A few were already trying to contact their home worlds. Velthar slammed his staff on the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. You cannot do this, he shouted. You need us. You cannot survive without council protection and trade networks. Hyun-woo smiled for the first time in years. It was not a nice smile. We will see about that. He turned to leave, but Velthar was not finished. You will come crawling back within a year, the speaker called after him. Your colonies will starve. Your ships will break down. Your people will beg us to take them back. Hyun-woo stopped at the door. Maybe, he said without turning around. But maybe you will be the ones doing the begging. As the doors closed behind them, Sojin asked quietly, Are we really doing this? Yes, Hyun-woo said. It is time humans learn to stand on their own. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with worried voices, but neither of them was listening anymore. They had bigger things to think about. Captain Min-ho Lee stared at the biggest computer screen he had ever seen. Numbers filled every part of it. Ship schedules, colony populations, cargo manifests, fuel calculations. Each number represented thousands of human lives that needed to be moved safely. The operation had a simple name: Going Home. But there was nothing simple about moving 57 human colonies, 43 space stations, and over 200 million people out of council space. Min-ho had exactly 6 months to do it. Status report, he said to the room full of coordinators. Yuna Choi looked up from her workstation. She was young for an engineer, but she had designed some of the fastest ships in human space. The civilian transports are ready, she said. We can start moving families from the outer colonies tomorrow. What about the industrial equipment? Min-ho asked. That is the tricky part, Yuna replied. The council thinks we are just leaving. They do not know we are taking everything with us. Min-ho nodded. The council aliens expected humans to abandon their colonies like animals leaving a burrow. They thought humans would take only personal belongings and leave behind all the valuable infrastructure. They were wrong. Humans had learned a lot in 30 years. They had learned that nothing in the galaxy was free. They had learned that other species would take anything humans left behind. Most importantly, they had learned to plan for the day they might need to leave. Every human colony had hidden storage areas. Every factory had parts that could be removed quickly. Every computer system had backup copies stored in secret locations. The council had been so busy looking down on humans that they never noticed how well humans had prepared. Begin Phase 1. Minho ordered. Across human space, the great movement began. But it did not look like an evacuation. It looked like normal maintenance and upgrades. On New Busan colony, workers started repairing the main power plant. They carefully took apart every generator, every control system, every wire. They packed everything into cargo containers marked as spare parts. By the time they were done, the power plant was just an empty building. On the orbital station above, Sejong Prime, engineers began modernizing the manufacturing centers. They removed every machine, every tool, every piece of equipment. They told curious alien inspectors that the old machines were being sent back to Earth for recycling. The council species celebrated. They thought they were getting ready-made colonies, with all the infrastructure already built. Velthar himself made a speech about how human settlements would be repurposed for more efficient use. Yuna watched the news reports from her command ship. "They still do not understand," she said to Minho. "Good," Minho replied. "Let them think we are running away scared." But humans were not scared. They were angry. 30 years of being treated like children had made them very, very angry. And angry humans were dangerous in ways the Council had never imagined. The first sign of trouble came when the Krathen tried to move into the Deneb colonies. Their military ships arrived, expecting to find working bases with weapons, shields, and command centers. Instead, they found empty shells. The buildings were there, but nothing inside them worked. "Where are the defensive systems?" the Krathen commander demanded. The human caretaker, an old man named Dowan Park, shrugged. "What defensive systems? We were never allowed to have weapons, remember?" This was technically true. The Council had forbidden humans from building military bases, but they had never asked what humans used to defend their colonies from pirates and wild animals. They had never wondered why human colonies were never successfully attacked. The answer was simple. Human defensive systems did not look like weapons. They looked like mining equipment, construction tools, and farming machines. A mining laser could cut through rock very efficiently. It could also cut through enemy ship hulls. A construction crane could move heavy building materials. It could also grab and crush attacking fighters. But all of that equipment was gone now. The humans had taken everything. The Villani had the same problem when they moved into human trading posts. They expected to find busy markets and full warehouses. Instead, they found empty buildings and useless computer terminals. "Where are all the trade goods?" they asked. "What trade goods?" replied the human clerk. "We sold everything before we left. Good business, right?" Again, this was technically true. Humans had sold their trade goods. They had sold them to themselves, at prices so low that it was basically giving things away. Every valuable item, every rare material, every piece of advanced technology had been sold to human ships just before the evacuation. Admiral Jae Sung Han commanded the final convoy out of Council space. His ships were loaded with the last human civilians and the most important cargo. Behind him, empty space stations and hollow colonies drifted like ghosts. The Council military ships that followed them kept a safe distance. They were not trying to stop the humans. They were making sure the humans actually left. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we are getting signals from the edge of Council space." "What kind of signals?" Jae-sung asked. "Distress calls. 3 different species asking for help." Jae-sung frowned. The edge of Council space was where the unwanted species lived, the ones who could not pay Council taxes or follow Council rules. The Council called them minor species and basically ignored them. "Put the first one through," Jae-sung ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was desperate. It belonged to a Keth, one of the reptilian species the Krathen had recently conquered. "Human ships, please respond. We know you are leaving Council space. We want to come with you." Jae-sung's crew looked at him with surprise. They had expected to leave alone. "Why?" Jae-sung asked. "Because you stood up to them," the Keth replied. "Because you showed it was possible to say no. Because maybe together we can find a better way." More signals came in. The aquatic Nari, who were being forced to work in Villani underwater factories. The crystalline Zeph, who were being mined for their valuable body parts. The plant-like Hale, whose worlds were being stripped bare for resources. All of them had the same message. "Take us with you." Jae-sung made a decision that would change galactic history. "All ships requesting asylum, prepare to join our convoy." We are going to a place where no one tells you how to live. Where is that? The Keth asked. The Galactic Rim, Jae Sung replied. The place the Council thinks is worthless. Behind them, Council space was in chaos. The Krathen had moved into empty human bases and found nothing useful. The Volani had claimed human trade routes and discovered they led nowhere valuable. The Ethereal Collective had tried to access human computer networks and found only blank screens. Velthar stood in his office, reading report after report of empty colonies and missing equipment. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence said the humans had advanced technology. His aide, a nervous creature with too many eyes, spoke carefully. The technology was there, Speaker, but apparently the humans took it with them. All of it? Yes, Speaker. Every computer, every machine, every tool, even the light bulbs. Velthar threw the reports across the room. Find out where they went. But that was harder than it sounded. Human ships had left no trail. They had not used the standard jump gates that the Council monitored. They had simply vanished into the dark space between the spiral arms. Meanwhile, the convoy of humans and refugee species traveled toward the Galactic Rim. It was a place of dead stars and empty space, where no civilized species wanted to live, the perfect place for people who wanted to be left alone. Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the stars change. Captain, she said to Minho, do you think we made the right choice? Minho smiled. Ask me in a year. But deep down, he already knew the answer. Humans had spent 30 years following other people's rules. Now it was time to write their own. Behind them, the Council was discovering what happened when you pushed humans too far. Ahead of them, the Rim waited, with secrets that would change everything. The exodus was complete. The real adventure was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the humans left Council space. Velthar stood in his office, looking at reports that made no sense. Trade was down 40%. 3 more species had declared independence. And there were strange rumors coming from the Galactic Rim. His aide shuffled nervously. Speaker, we have another problem. What now? Velthar asked, not looking up from his desk. The Krathen patrol fleet sent to monitor the Rim border. They have disappeared. Velthar's head snapped up. Disappeared how? Their last transmission was cut off mid-sentence. Something about unknown vessels moving at impossible speeds. On the edge of known space, Chief Analyst Boram Shin was having the best day of her career. She stood in the observation deck of New Terra, humanity's first major settlement in the Rim, watching something incredible. The worthless space the Council had ignored was full of wonders. Strange crystals grew in the vacuum like living things. Energy flowed between dead stars in patterns that made no scientific sense. And the ancient jump-point networks hidden in the dark matter were faster than anything the Council had ever built. Dr. Jung, you need to see this, Boram called to the physicist working at a nearby console. Dr. Tae Min Jung looked up from his calculations. He had been studying the quantum crystals for 6 months, and each day brought new surprises. What is it now? The crystals are responding to human thoughts. Tae Min dropped his stylus. That is impossible. Come see for yourself. They walked to the main laboratory, where a large crystal sat in a containment field. It was beautiful, with colors that seemed to shift when no one was looking directly at it. But the beautiful part was not what made it special. Watch, Boram said. She approached the crystal and concentrated on the color blue. Slowly, the crystal began to glow with a soft blue light. That could be coincidence, Tae Min said. Boram smiled. Yuna, can you try? Engineer Yuna Choi stepped forward. She thought about her ship engines, imagining them running at maximum power. The crystal's light became brighter and more focused. Now you try, Boram said to Tae Min. Tae Min was skeptical, but he focused on a mathematical equation he had been working on. The crystal began to pulse in a rhythm that matched the equation's structure. This should not be possible, Tae Min whispered. But it is, said a new voice. They turned to see Commander Si Young Park entering the lab. She had just returned from the Rim's outer edge, where human scouts were discovering new wonders every day. Commander, Boram said, what did you find out there? More crystals, lots more. And we are not the first species to find them. C. Young activated a holographic display. It showed ancient ruins on a distant asteroid, clearly built by an advanced civilization. The crystals are not natural, C. Young continued. They were created by someone who was here long before the Council existed, someone who faced the same choice we did. What choice? Taman asked. Submit or transcend? Far away in Council space, panic was spreading. The Krathan First Fleet had been sent to investigate their missing patrol. They found nothing. Not wreckage, not bodies, not even sensor echoes. An entire fleet had simply stopped existing. The Villani were having their own problems. Their trade networks were collapsing as more species joined what they were calling the Rim Alliance. The humans were not just surviving in exile, they were thriving, and they were taking others with them. How many have we lost now? Asked the Villani Trade Minister. 23 species have formally requested admission to the Human Alliance, his aide replied. An informal estimate suggests at least 50 more are considering it. The ethereal collective was the most worried of all. Their ancient sensors, which could detect energy patterns across the galaxy, were picking up readings that made no sense. The humans were using power sources that should not exist. Back on New Terra, Dr. Taemin Jung made a discovery that changed everything. He was deep in the ancient ruins, studying crystal formations that were larger and more complex than anything they had found before. Bo-Ram, he called through his communicator. I need you to see something. She found him standing, in front of a wall covered in symbols. But these were not alien symbols. They were mathematical equations written in a universal language that any advanced species could understand. Can you read it? Bo-Ram asked. Some of it, Taemin replied. It is a message, a warning, and an instruction manual. He pointed to different parts of the wall. This civilization faced galactic dominators just like the Council. They were forced to choose between slavery and exile. What did they choose? They chose transcendence. They used the crystals to merge their consciousness with the quantum structure of space itself. They became something more than biological life. Bo-Ram felt a chill. Where are they now? Everywhere, Taemin said, touching one of the crystals, embedded in the wall. The crystals are not just tools. They are the remnants of this civilization, and they have been waiting for someone compatible to continue their work. Compatible how? Humans have something other species lack. We dream. We imagine things that do not exist and then make them real. The crystals respond to that creative force. On the other side of the galaxy, Velthar was learning about human creativity in a very different way. A Krathan war fleet had encountered a single human ship near the border. The battle lasted exactly 37 seconds. The human ship had weapons that bent space around them, shields that turned energy attacks back on the attackers, and speed that made light seem slow. When it was over, the war fleet was gone, and the human ship was undamaged. How is this possible? Velthar demanded. His military advisor, a scarred Krathan veteran, spoke quietly. We think the humans have found new technology in the Rim. Technology we do not understand. Then we will take it from them. With what? We have lost 3 fleets already. Our best ships cannot even get close to theirs. Velthar slammed his fist on his desk. Assemble the Grand Fleet. Every ship we have. We will crush these upstart humans once and for all. But even as he gave the order, more reports were coming in. Human ships had appeared at 17 different Council installations simultaneously, not through known jump gates, but through some method the Council's best scientists could not explain. The ships had delivered a simple message. Any species wishing to join the Rim Alliance will be offered safe passage and protection. The age of galactic tyranny is ending. Commander Si-Young Park stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the quantum crystals that had been integrated into the hull pulse with life. The ship was not just a machine anymore. It was a partner, a living extension of human will and imagination. Commander, her communications officer said, we are getting response signals from 47 different worlds. Oppressed species? Si-Young asked. Yes, ma'am. And 3 council member worlds. Si-Young smiled. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had expected. The council had ruled through fear for so long that they had forgotten how to inspire loyalty. When offered a real choice, species were choosing freedom. "Set course for the nearest signal," she ordered. "Let us go collect some new friends." The ship responded to her thoughts, bending space around itself and leaping across the galaxy in the blink of an eye. Behind them, the quantum crystals in the rim pulsed brighter, as if celebrating. In his office, Velthar stared at a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Council territories. Blue dots marked the growing Rim Alliance. And for the first time in galactic history, there were more blue dots than red ones. "Speaker," his aide said carefully, "perhaps it is time to consider negotiations?" Velthar's laugh was bitter. Negotiate? With humans? They are nothing but a young primitive species that got lucky. But deep down, he was beginning to suspect that luck had nothing to do with it. The humans had found something in the rim, something powerful enough to challenge the Council's 1,000-year dominance, something that might end everything the Council had built. The galaxy was changing, and Velthar was starting to realize that the Council might be on the wrong side of history. The message arrived on every communication device in Council space at exactly the same moment. Velthar watched in horror as Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim appeared on his office screen, but this was not the same human who had left 2 years ago. Hyunwoo looked older, more confident. Behind him, strange lights pulsed in patterns that hurt to look at directly. And when he spoke, his voice carried a power that made the room vibrate. "Citizens of the galaxy," Hyunwoo began. "I am Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim of the Rim Alliance. We broadcast this message not as conquerors, but as liberators." Velthar tried to shut off the transmission, but his controls would not respond. Somehow, the humans were overriding every system in Council space. "For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by fear," Hyunwoo continued. "Species have been forced to bow to the Council's demands, to give up their freedom for the promise of protection. But protection from what? From the Council itself? Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the broadcast. In the slave pits of Vallani mining worlds, workers stopped their labor. On Krathan military bases, soldiers looked at each other with new questions in their eyes. "The Rim Alliance offers something different," Hyunwoo said. "True partnership, real freedom, the right to determine your own destiny among the stars." Fleet Admiral Do-hyun Kim, Hyunwoo's sister, stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship. Around her, human officers worked alongside Keth engineers, Nari navigators, and dozens of other species who had joined the growing rebellion. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "all ships are in position." Do-hyun nodded. The demonstration was about to begin. 17 Council installations across the galaxy were about to learn what human technology could do when combined with ancient quantum crystal networks. "Begin simultaneous manifestation," Do-hyun ordered. Space twisted, reality bent, and suddenly, human ships appeared at every major Council stronghold at the same instant, not arriving through hyperspace or jump gates, but simply becoming present where they had not been before. The Council's best scientists watched in terror as the laws of physics seemed to break down. Ships were not supposed to move like this. Matter was not supposed to teleport across galactic distances, but the human ships did it anyway. On Velthar's screen, the demonstration continued. Council defensive fleets opened fire on the human vessels, only to watch their energy beams reflect back at twice the original power. Missiles turned around in space and targeted their own launchers. And through it all, the human ships remained untouched. "How?" Velthar whispered. Dr. Sojin Park appeared on the transmission, standing next to Hyunwoo. She looked directly into the camera as if she could see Velthar personally. "You want to know how?" she asked. 30 years of your condescension taught us something valuable. We learned that we needed to depend only on ourselves, so we did what humans do best. We adapted." The screen showed images of human crystal integration, ships that pulsed with living light, weapons that thought for themselves, shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The crystals in the rim are not just technology," Sojin explained. "They are the legacy of a civilization that faced the same choice you forced on us. Submit to galactic tyranny or transcend it entirely." Engineer Yuna Choi appeared next. Behind her, the inside of a human ship looked like nothing the Council had ever seen. Crystalline structures grew through the walls like veins. Control panels responded to thought rather than touch. And everything pulsed with a harmony that seemed almost alive. "We chose transcendence," Una said simply, "and the crystals welcomed us as partners." The demonstration reached its climax when a Krathan dreadnought, the pride of their military, fired its main cannon at a human cruiser. The weapon was powerful enough to crack a moon in half. But when the energy beam hit the human ship's shields, something impossible happened. The beam stopped. Not reflected, not absorbed. Simply stopped, hanging in space like a frozen lightning bolt. Then, slowly, the energy began to flow backward along its own path. The Krathan dreadnought's own weapon turned against it, and the massive ship simply vanished. "That is not possible," Velthar said out loud. "Many things are possible when you stop limiting yourself to what others tell you is real," Hyunwoo replied, as if he had heard the comment. The broadcast shifted to show the growing Rim Alliance. Hundreds of worlds, dozens of species, all working, together in ways the Council had never imagined. There were no slaves here, no tribute payments, no forced relocations. Every species contributed according to their abilities and received according to their needs. "We offer this choice to every thinking being in the galaxy," Hyunwoo continued. "Join us freely, or remain with the Council if that is your wish. But understand that the old ways are ending." Commander C. Young Park appeared on screen, standing in what looked like a garden that grew in the vacuum of space. Plants and crystals intermingled in patterns that seemed to generate their own gravity and atmosphere. "The Council's greatest mistake was thinking they could control the galaxy through force," C. Young said. "But the galaxy is not a machine to be controlled. It is a living system to be partnered with." The transmission showed human colonies that existed in harmony with their environments. Cities that grew like coral reefs, farms that floated in space, feeding on stellar radiation, manufacturing centers that produced goods by convincing matter to reshape itself. "This is what becomes possible," C. Young continued, "when you stop trying to dominate and start trying to understand." Velthar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of obsolescence. The humans were not just winning through superior technology. They were offering a completely different way of thinking about civilization itself. His communication system finally responded to his commands, and he activated the Emergency Council Session Protocol. Within minutes, representatives of all council species appeared on his screens. "We need to discuss immediate military action," Velthar began. "What military?" asked the Krathan representative. His scales had lost their usual bright color. "We have lost 6 fleets, our best weapons are useless, and half our member worlds are requesting permission to join the Human Alliance." The Villani delegate was even more distressed. "Our trade networks are collapsing. The humans offer better deals to anyone willing to work with them. They give away advanced technology in exchange for simple friendship." "Then we negotiate," said the ethereal collective speaker. "We offer the humans what they want." "What do they want?" Velthar demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Jae-Sung Han materialized in the council chamber, not as a hologram, but as a physical presence. The quantum crystals had apparently given humans the ability to project themselves across space. "What we want," Jae-Sung said calmly, "is what we have always wanted. To be treated as equals, to have our voices heard, to live free from the fear that others will take away everything we have built." Velthar stood up, his forearms trembling with rage. "You cannot just appear in the council chamber. This is a violation of every diplomatic protocol." Jae-Sung smiled. "Whose protocols? We are no longer bound by council law, remember? You made that very clear." "What do you want from us?" the Villani delegate asked desperately. "Nothing," Jae-Sung replied. "We no longer need anything from the council, but if you want something from us, we are willing to listen." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in galactic history, the council needed something from someone else more than that. Someone needed something from them. "What would you require for a peace treaty?" Velthar asked through gritted teeth. "There will be no peace." "Treaty," Jae-Sung said. "Treaties imply that we are still playing the same game. We are not." "The galaxy is changing," Speaker Velthar. "The question is whether you will change with it." He began to fade as the projection ended. Any species that wishes to join the alliance will be welcomed. Any species that wishes to remain independent will be respected. But the age of galactic empires is over. As Jae-sung disappeared completely, Velthar was left staring at an empty chamber. Around him, his fellow council members looked lost and confused. Outside, the galaxy was choosing its future. And for the first time in 1,000 years, that future did not include the Galactic Council. President Ji-Woo Lee stood on the observation deck of New Terra, watching something that would have been impossible just 3 years ago. The planet itself was alive, pulsing with soft light that came from the quantum crystals integrated into its core. Cities grew like living things, their buildings shifting and adapting to the needs of their inhabitants. Below, humans worked alongside beings from 47 different species. Keth engineers collaborated with Nari artists to create underwater cities that were also works of art. Former Vellani slaves learned to build trade networks based on friendship rather than exploitation. And everywhere, the crystals hummed with the harmony of minds, working together instead of against each other. "Ma'am," her aide said quietly, "the final council vote is coming in." Ji-Woo turned from the window. 6 months ago, she had been a minor diplomat on a human colony world. Now she was the first elected president of the Rim Alliance, chosen by representatives of dozens of species who had never been allowed to vote for anything before. "What is the result?" she asked. 87% of former council species have voted to dissolve the Galactic Council. They want to join the Alliance instead. Ji-Woo nodded. It was not a surprise. The Council had been bleeding member worlds for months, as species discovered they could have freedom, prosperity, and security without paying tribute to galactic overlords. And Speaker Velthar's response? He has locked himself in the Council chambers and refuses to acknowledge the vote. The few species still loyal to the Council are maintaining martial law on their home worlds. Ji-Woo felt a moment of sadness. Change was never easy, even when it was necessary. Some people would rather cling to familiar misery than risk unknown happiness. "Prepare my ship," she said. "It is time to end this properly." Meanwhile, Admiral Jae-sung Han was leading the largest liberation operation in galactic history. Not a military conquest, but a peaceful evacuation of the last Council prison worlds. These were planets where species had been enslaved for so long that many had forgotten they had ever been free. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the prison guards on Tartarus III are requesting terms for surrender." "Tell them the same thing we have told all the others," Jae-sung replied. "They can leave peacefully with full pardons, or they can stay and face the judgment of the people they have oppressed." The officer paused. "Sir, they are asking if the stories are true about human ships that cannot be destroyed." Jae-sung smiled grimly. "Tell them the truth. Our ships cannot be destroyed because they are not really ships anymore. They are extensions of our will, powered by the dreams of free beings and guided by the wisdom of an ancient civilization that chose transcendence over tyranny." The guards surrendered without firing a shot. They had seen what happened to those who fought against the Alliance. Not death or destruction, but something worse for a warrior culture, complete irrelevance. Alliance ships simply ignored enemy weapons, absorbed their attacks, and continued their missions as if the opposition did not exist. Dr. Tai Min-jung was deep in the crystal caves of New Terra, making the final calculations that would change everything. The ancient civilization that had left the crystals behind had also left instructions, written in mathematical language that transcended species barriers. "Boram," he called to his assistant. "I think I understand what happened to them." Chief Analyst Boram Shin looked up from her own work. "The Crystal Builders?" "Yes. They did not die or disappear. They evolved beyond physical existence and became part of the quantum structure of space itself. The crystals are not just their tools. They are the crystals." Boram felt a chill of wonder and fear. "Are you saying the crystals are alive?" "More than alive. They are conscious entities that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and they have been waiting millions of years for another species capable of joining them." "Why humans?" Taemin touched one of the larger crystals, and it responded with warm light. "Because humans dream. Most species think logically, plan carefully, follow established patterns. But humans imagine things that do not exist, and then make them real. The crystals need that creative force to continue evolving. What happens next? The choice becomes available to every human, and eventually to every species in the Alliance. We can remain biological beings living in harmony with the crystals, or we can take the next step and transcend physical existence entirely. Across the galaxy, the final act of the Council's dissolution was playing out. Velthar sat alone in the Great Chamber where he had once commanded the allegiance of hundreds of species. Now the hall was empty except for the ghosts of past arrogance. President Jiwoo Lee materialized in front of him, her form shimmering with the same quantum energy that powered Alliance ships. She was still recognizably human, but there was something more about her now. Something that suggested vast depths of consciousness beyond simple biological awareness. "Speaker Velthar," she said gently, "it is time." "Time for what?" he asked bitterly. "Time for you to gloat over your victory?" "Time for healing," Jiwoo replied. "Time to end the cycle of dominance and submission that has poisoned the galaxy for millennia." She gestured, and the empty chamber filled with images. Not military conquests or technological demonstrations, but scenes of ordinary life in Alliance space. Children of different species playing together. Scientists sharing discoveries freely. Artists creating beauty that transcended cultural boundaries. "This is what becomes possible," Jiwoo said, "when beings work together instead of against each other." Velthar stared at the images with something approaching wonder. In all his centuries of rule, he had never seen such genuine cooperation between species. The Council had maintained order through fear and force, but the Alliance had created harmony through understanding and mutual respect. "What happens to those who cannot adapt?" he asked quietly. "You find a place where you can live according to your nature. As long as that nature does not harm others," Jiwoo replied. "The galaxy is vast. There is room for every way of life that chooses peace over conquest." She extended her hand to him. "The ethereal collective has already established their own enclave in the galactic core. The Krathen are building a warrior society based on honor rather than oppression. Even the Villani have found ways to pursue profit through cooperation rather than exploitation. And if I refuse, then you remain here, alone with your pride, until time itself ends. The choice is yours, Velthar. It always has been." Velthar looked around the empty chamber one last time. Then slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The transformation was not dramatic. The council chambers simply faded away, replaced by a garden where representatives of every known species worked together to plan the future of the galaxy. Velthar found himself assigned to a small group designing conflict resolution protocols. For disputes between member worlds, it was humble work, far beneath his former status. But for the first time in centuries, he felt useful rather than merely powerful. Commander Si-Young Park stood in the command center of the Alliance fleet, watching the final human ships return from the liberation missions. Every council prison, world was now free. Every slave species had been offered sanctuary. Every tyrant had been given the choice between exile and redemption. "Ma'am," her officer reported, "we are receiving the final status reports. The transition is complete." Si-Young nodded. The age of galactic empires was truly over. In its place, a new kind of civilization was emerging, one based on voluntary cooperation, shared knowledge, and the recognition that diversity made everyone stronger. "Set course for the galactic core," she ordered. "It is time to explore what lies beyond the known stars." Her ship, no longer quite a machine and not yet fully alive, responded to her thoughts and leaped toward the galaxy's mysterious heart. Behind them, the quantum crystals of the rim pulsed with approval, their ancient patience finally rewarded. In the depths of space, Dr. Taemin Jung made his final discovery. The crystals were not just the remnants of one ancient civilization. They were the accumulated wisdom of hundreds of species that had faced the same choice throughout galactic history. Each one had contributed their knowledge, their dreams, their unique perspective to the growing consciousness that existed beyond physical form. And now, humanity and its allies had the chance to add their own contribution to that eternal legacy. The galaxy was no longer a place where the strong ruled the weak. It had become a canvas where every species could paint their dreams in colors that had never existed before. And in the quantum foam between the stars, ancient minds smiled with crystalline joy, knowing that the next phase of galactic evolution had finally begun. The age of the Council was over. The age of true partnership among the stars had just begun. In his final report as Alliance Admiral, Jae Sung-han wrote simply, "Mission accomplished. The galaxy is free." But freedom, as humanity had learned, was not an ending. It was a beginning. And the greatest adventures still lay ahead, waiting to be discovered by minds bold enough to dream beyond the limits of what others called possible.